The wind started howling long before the storm came. Folks in these parts say that's when the plains start talking, when the ghosts stretch their bones and whisper through the pine. I'd lived through enough winters to know that sound usually meant trouble. Still, that night, I lit the lantern and left it by the window. Some habits you don't outgrow, especially the ones that keep you human. Snow had been falling since dusk, fat and lazy, turning the yard into one white sheet of quiet. My dog, Scout, lifted his head once, gave a low growl, then went still again. I remember thinking how peaceful it was right before everything changed. A knock came soft, then another, weaker. When I opened the door, she was there. The kind of sight that steals your breath for all the wrong reasons. She was barefoot in the snow, skin cut open from the cold, hair matted with ice. I thought at first she was a ghost. She looked like one half here, half gone. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking like the wood between us, "don't send me back." The words hit harder than the wind. I didn't know who she was or what kind of back she meant, but something in her eyes told me it wasn't a place, it was a man. I stepped aside, slow, careful not to scare her. "You're inside now," I said. "That's all that matters." She stumbled past me, too weak to argue. I shut the door and leaned the rifle back against the wall. She kept shaking like the storm had followed her in. When I wrapped a blanket around her, her bones felt light as kindling. Her lips were blue, and there was a bruise under one eye that no storm could have made. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the wind pushing against the house, wanting in. I poured her a cup of coffee, weak and sweet, the kind you make for someone who needs more warmth than caffeine. She held it with both hands, like she'd forgotten what heat felt like. "What's your name?" I asked. "Anna," she said after a long time, like it was a secret she wasn't sure she could still keep. "All right, Anna. I'm Eli." She nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on the window, on the dark line of pines swaying out there. "He's coming," she said, voice flat. "He always comes when the wind starts howling." That's when I felt it, the change in the room. It wasn't just fear, it was memory. The kind that crawls under your skin and stays there. She didn't have to say who he was. Every town has a man like that, wears a badge or a smile, and people look the other way. I'd seen his kind before. Hell, I'd once been paid to fight for men like him. That was a long time ago, before I learned there are battles that don't end when the gunfire stops. So I did what I could. I stoked the fire, gave her the bed, and took the chair by the door. Scout lay down beside me, ears twitching, waiting for the sound that always comes next. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, so quiet I almost missed it. I thought about lying, saying something easy like, "because it's right." But the truth sat heavier than that. "Because I didn't last time," I said, "and I've had to live with it ever since." She didn't ask what I meant, and I didn't tell her. Some things you don't drag into the light unless you're ready to face the shadow they throw. Outside, the wind picked up again. Sharper. Colder. The old barn door rattled once, like a warning. I looked at the lantern still burning by the window and made a silent promise. Whatever came out of that storm, I'd meet it head on. Maybe not as the man I used to be, but as the man I should have been all along. The wind howled louder. Somewhere out there, boots crunched in the snow. Scout growled low in his throat. Anna's hands tightened on the blanket. "He's here," she whispered. And that's when I knew the unthinkable wasn't what I had to do to stop him. It was what I'd have to live with if I didn't. By the time I got the door bolted, the wind was shaking the windows hard enough to rattle your teeth. Snow pushed through the cracks like smoke, curling in the lamplight before it vanished. Scout stayed by the fire, nose low, the kind of alert that only comes from knowing what danger smells like. I poured more coffee and set it on the table near her. Anna hadn't moved much. She sat hunched, knees pulled to her chest, eyes fixed on the flames like they were the only thing still holding her to this world. I'd seen that stare before in field hospitals back in '63, when the boys weren't sure if they were going to live till morning. "You can sleep," I told her. "He won't come through that storm." She didn't look up. "Storms don't stop him," she said softly. "They hide him." Something about the way she said it made the air feel heavier. I took off my gloves and sat opposite her, close enough for her to see my hands were empty. "You got family?" I asked. "Not anymore." "Someone you trust in town?" She shook her head, slow, like every answer took a piece of her. He's the sheriff there, she said finally. Or was. Depends who you ask. Folks call him Jed. That name hung in the room like a bad smell. I knew it. Everyone around the border did. Jed Harlow, the kind of lawman who never needed a reason to draw his gun, just an excuse. Anna kept talking, voice dry as paper. I cleaned rooms at his station. He said I was lucky to have work. Said he'd keep me safe. Then he started coming by after sundown. Said no one believed me if I talked. She stopped there, her breath shaking, eyes glassy but not from tears. It was the look of someone who'd run out of crying long ago. I didn't say sorry. Sorry's a word that dies before it reaches the person who needs it. I just leaned back, feeling the guilt twist in my gut. Not for her story, but for the one it reminded me of. There was a girl once, not much older than Anna, found outside Cheyenne same winter I lost my daughter. Folks said it was wolves. I never went to see if that was true. Some things a man runs from, even when he's good at fighting. You did right to leave, I said quietly. Some folks got uniforms, but they ain't the law. She blinked, like she wanted to believe it but couldn't quite yet. He'll find me. He always does. I stirred the fire, watching sparks shoot up the chimney like little prayers that never made it high enough. Then he'll find me first, I said. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. She looked smaller suddenly, young in a way that hurt to see. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Knowing's overrated, I said. Ain't about names. It's about what a man can live with come daylight. That got a flicker out of her half disbelief, half gratitude. She stared at the cup between her hands, then said, You sound like someone who's already decided he can't. I smiled a little. Sharp girl. Maybe that's why I'm still up instead of sleeping. For the first time, she smiled back, just barely. The firelight caught the side of her face, softened the bruises. The storm outside was still howling, but inside the cabin, the silence started feeling less like fear and more like rest. I found some old blankets in the trunk and spread them near the stove. Get some sleep, I said. Tomorrow, we'll see about getting you to someone who ain't bought by that bastard. She hesitated, eyes darting to the window. He'll come when the wind slows. He always waits till it sounds human again. I nodded. Then we'll let him wait. When she finally lay down, I sat by the door again, rifle across my lap, lantern low. Scout shifted closer, pressing against my boot. I could hear Anna's breathing steady, the kind that comes after too many nights holding it in. The wind moaned around the eaves, carrying all the ghosts this land's ever made. Sometime near dawn, the storm broke. The quiet that followed was worse than the noise. It was the kind of quiet that listens back. I stepped outside to feed the horses, snow up to my knees, breath turning silver in the air. The world was washed clean, or pretending to be. From the ridge, I could see a trail cutting through the drifts fresh, too clean to be from before the storm. Boot tracks. 2 sets. 1 man, 1 horse. And a third shadow where the snow hadn't settled right, like something heavy had been dragged. Scout started barking, tail low. I turned toward the cabin and saw Anna in the doorway, wrapped in my coat, eyes wide with that look people get when the past catches up faster than the sun can rise. He found us, didn't he? She said. I didn't answer. I just loaded the rifle slow, deliberate, the way you do when you know what's coming. Go inside, I said. She shook her head. Not again. And in that moment I realized this wasn't just about keeping her safe, it was about helping her stop running. I'd been doing the same thing my whole damn life, just in a quieter way. Maybe that's why the universe put her at my door in the middle of all that wind to remind me that some debts don't get paid by hiding. I looked out across the snow, where the tracks disappeared into the trees, and felt the first stirrings of a plan. If the devil wanted his due, I'd make sure he earned it in fire and frost both. The snow hadn't stopped creaking since dawn. Every step I took around the barn sounded like a door hinge on a coffin. The tracks circled halfway across the corral, then cut toward the road that led out of town. Whoever came this way had patience, the kind of patience born from cruelty. I'd seen that before in men who hunted other men. They didn't rush. They waited for fear to do half their work. Anna stood by the porch, clutching the blanket tight around her shoulders. Her eyes searched the horizon, not for what she could see, but for what she could feel coming. He doesn't give up, she said, almost like a prayer that already knew the answer. Then we don't either, I told her. Get inside, keep the lamp lit. If he's close enough to see the light, I want him to know he's not walking into a ghost house. That earned me a look somewhere between disbelief and courage. She nodded once, slow, then turned back in, shutting the door with a click that sounded too small against all that open white. By noon, the storm clouds had drifted east, leaving a sky so blue it almost looked like a lie. The road from town was clearer now, a long scar cutting through the snow. I saddled my horse, checked the rifle, and rode down a ways, enough to see if the prints turned. They didn't. They led straight toward my place, then back again, like someone testing how far he could walk before losing his nerve. Half a mile out, I saw him. Jed Harlow. Same heavy coat, same swagger, the kind that says the world still owes him something. His horse was frosted white with sweat, breath smoking in the air. When he saw me, he smiled not wide, just enough to show the kind of man who thinks everything's still under his thumb. "Morning, Turner," he called out like we were two neighbors meeting over fence wire. I didn't answer, just sat the saddle, thumb resting on the hammer of my rifle. He noticed. "No need for all that," he said. "I came peaceful. Word in town said a young lady came by your place. Thought I'd check she was safe." "Funny," I said. "She told me the same thing about you." His smile thinned. "Girl's confused. Been running wild, saying things. Folks will listen to a pretty face till they learn better." I let the silence stretch, long enough to make him shift in the saddle. "You done?" I asked finally. He looked me up and down, sizing the distance between us. "You got no call to stick your nose in this, Eli. She's mine to deal with. Ain't your concern?" "There's a word for men who say things like that," I said. "None of 'em fit in polite company." The air between us froze, quiet except for the wind whistling through dry pine. I saw his jaw work, anger simmering under that badge. He'd shot men for less. "You think that uniform makes you untouchable?" I said before he could speak. "Out here, you're just another man in the snow. And if you come for her again, that's all you'll leave as." He leaned forward in the saddle, voice low. "You planning to play hero again, Turner? You always did think you could fix the world. Heard how that ended last time." My hand twitched on the reins, not from fear but memory. He knew. Of course he knew. The battle near Cheyenne, the one where a whole wagon train burned because I froze for half a heartbeat. Men like Jed make it their business to dig up your ghost before you can bury theirs. "I'm not the man I was," I said. "That's so?" His grin came back, meaner now. "Good. That one was easier to break." Then he kicked his horse, turning back down the trail. "You tell that girl," he called over his shoulder, "the wind don't blow forever. When it stops, I'll be there." And I watched him disappear into the timber, leaving the world too still again. Scout trotted up beside me, whining low. The dog could feel what I did. The storm wasn't over. It had just changed shape. When I got back, Anna was sitting by the window, staring at the fading tracks outside. "That was him, wasn't it?" she asked. I nodded. "He came to see if we'd break first." Her face tightened, but her hands didn't shake this time. "So what now?" "Now," I said, hanging my coat by the door, "we make him think he already won." She frowned. "I don't understand." "You don't need to. Not yet. You just have to trust that when the wind stops, I'll be ready before he is." She studied me for a long moment, then whispered, "You're not doing this just for me." "No," I said. "I'm doing it because I should have done it long before you ever knocked on my door." End of tell. Outside, the last of the sunlight died behind the ridge, leaving the snow to glow faint blue. The quiet settled in again, heavy as confession. Scout barked once at the dark, then fell silent. Somewhere out there, a man like Jed was waiting for the weather to calm. I poured 2 cups of coffee and handed her one. The fire crackled, and for a brief moment, the world felt almost safe. But I knew what safety was out here, just another word for the space between storms. And this time, I wasn't planning to wait it out. The next morning came without a sun, just a pale smear of light behind the clouds. The air was sharp enough to draw blood if you breathed too deep. I spent the first hours mending the fence, but my mind wasn't on wire or nails. It was on Jed Harlow and the promise he'd made when he rode away. Men like him don't bluff, they circle, they measure, they wait. Anna watched me through the window. I could feel her eyes even when I wasn't looking. When I came in, she'd cleared the table and set the lanterns in a line, polishing the glass like a ritual. She didn't have to ask what I was thinking. "You're going to set a trap," she said. I nodded. "Something he won't see till it's too late." Her gaze drifted toward the barn. "You'll burn it." I took a long breath, tasted ash in my mouth, though the fire wasn't lit yet. "Maybe. Some things need to go before others can live." She didn't flinch. "Then let me help." M. I looked at her, really looked, and saw no trace of the girl who'd arrived barefoot in the snow. The fear was still there, but it had shape now. It was anger refined into purpose. We worked in silence most of the afternoon. I laid down oil from the barrels that used to keep the lanterns fed, mixing it with snow to slow the burn. She wove twine across the rafters, thin enough to hide but strong enough to hold till the right moment. The horses we led to the back corral. They snorted against the wind, uneasy but safe. By dusk, the trap was ready, a mouth carved out of wood and frost. I told Anna the signal. 1 lamp by the window meant stay low, 2 meant run for the shed. She just nodded. There was no need for more talk. The waiting was louder than any storm. Night fell like a lid, the kind of dark that makes you question if you ever really saw daylight. I sat by the window, rifle on my knees, Scout asleep at my boots. Every creak, every sigh of timber, sounded like boots on snow. Sometime past midnight, Scout lifted his head and gave one low growl. I killed the lamp. The world went black, except for the thin glow from the stove. Anna moved to the back room, silent as breath. Then came it the crunch of hooves, slow, deliberate, stopping just outside the gate. Jed's voice cut through the dark, lazy and cruel. "Evening, Turner. You up?" I didn't answer. The latch on the gate squealed. Boots crunched closer. Another set behind him, 2 men, maybe 3. "Come on out now," he called. "No need for drama. Just hand the girl over. She'll tell folks you helped her. Maybe they'll let you keep your land." His words rolled in easy, but I could hear the edge underneath. I waited till they reached the barn door, then struck the match. The flame jumped to life, small and trembling in my hand. I touched it to the soaked rag hanging near the frame. It caught fast. Fire crawled up the beam, orange against the snow, beautiful and wrong. Jed cursed, stepping back. "You son of a—" The oil lit faster than he expected, licking along the lines we'd laid, turning the barn into a cage of light. His men shouted, trying to douse it, slipping in the slush. One fired a shot that cracked the night open, but it went wild. I stepped out from behind the shed, rifle leveled. "Game's over, Jed." He spun, half blinded by the glare. "You'll hang for this. Maybe, but you'll freeze long before I do." Then Anna's voice cut through the roar. "Jed?" She stood in the doorway of the house, one lantern high above her head, 2 lights burning side by side. The signal. I fired once, not to kill, just to drop the oil barrel near his feet. It burst, splashing fire outward. The snow hissed, steam rising like ghosts. Jed stumbled back, pistol drawn but shaking. "Put it down," I shouted. He aimed anyway. Anna moved first. She threw the second lantern hard, glass shattering against his shoulder. Flames jumped up his coat. He screamed, dropping the gun, rolling in the snow. One of his men ran to help, but the fire had already eaten most of the oil. The rest of them backed off, faces lit orange, terrified. I kicked the pistol aside and stood over him. The snow around us hissed and steamed. He looked up, eyes wide, and for the first time he wasn't sheriff, wasn't predator, just a man who'd finally met the thing he couldn't bully. "You think this makes you righteous?" he spat. "You're just like me." "Maybe," I said. "But the difference is, I remember every face I ever failed. Yours won't be one of them." He tried to speak again, but the fire took the air first. I pulled him clear, shoved snow over the flames until he stopped moving. He coughed once, twice, then went still. The others ran. The only sound left was the fire crackling down to embers and the wind moaning through the rafters. Anna walked up beside me, breathing hard. Her hands were shaking, but she wasn't crying. "You saved him," she said quietly. Not yet, I muttered, pressing snow against his burns. Let the law see him live. She knelt, helping, tears finally cutting clean lines down the soot on her face. You could have killed him. I already did, I said. Just not the way he expected. Um, the fire died slow, melting the snow into dirty pools. The barn leaned like an old drunk smoke curling into the sky. I looked at what was left and felt no pride, only the dull ache of something finished the wrong way but for the right reason. Anna touched my arm. It's over, she whispered. I shook my head. No, now it begins. Behind us, the eastern ridge glowed faint with the first color of morning gray turning blue, blue turning gold. The wind had gone quiet, but I could still hear it somewhere in my bones, that long, lonely howl reminding me that peace isn't what you find after the storm. It's what you decide to build from what the storm leaves behind. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, the world looked cleaner than it had any right to. Smoke rose thin from what was left of the barn, twisting into the pale sky like a prayer that didn't know who to reach. Jed Harlow was still breathing, half conscious, wrapped in what was left of his coat and my blanket. I'd packed snow against his burns till my hands went numb. Part of me wanted to stop. The rest kept going. Some debts you pay even when you don't owe them anymore. Anna stood a few feet away, arms crossed tight against the cold, her face hollowed out from the night. The wind had gone quiet, but she flinched at every sound, a bird, a board creak, the world remembering how to move again. When the riders came around noon, the crunch of hooves on snow felt almost holy. 2 deputies, a doctor, and the circuit sheriff from Bighorn. They dismounted slow, eyes taking in the wreck, the body, the rifle still leaning against the fence. The sheriff looked from me to Anna, then to Jed. What happened here? I opened my mouth, then shut it. Words are like bullets. Once you fire them, you don't get them back. Anna spoke first. Her voice was steady, quiet but sure. He came here last night. He had men. He tried to take me. Eli stopped him. The fire was an accident. Her lie was gentle, almost kind. I wanted to stop her, but the sheriff just nodded, like he already knew too much and didn't want to know the rest. We'll take him in, he said. Doctor will see if he lives long enough to answer for himself. Jed stirred then, groaning low. His eyes opened just enough to see me. There was no rage left, only something smaller recognition. Maybe shame, maybe nothing. You think you're better than me? He rasped. I shook my head. No, just different kinds of wrong. They loaded him on the sled, wrapped in tarp and rope. The deputies took his men too, caught later down the ridge. When the snow finally swallowed the last sound of hooves, silence filled the world again, not cruel this time, just waiting. That evening, I walked out to the field behind the house. The air smelled of soot and pine. Anna followed, coat buttoned up to her chin. She didn't say anything until I stopped by the half-buried fence post. You could have told them the truth, she said. I could have, I answered. But then the story becomes about the fire, not the man who lit it in the first place. She watched me for a long time. You ever think maybe you're too good at carrying other people's guilt? Maybe, I said. But carrying's easier than pretending it's not there. The next week, the snow started to melt early. The trial was set in town's small courthouse, 1 judge, a room full of whispers. Word travels fast in places where there's little else to talk about. Folks came from miles around, some to see justice, some to see a show. I sat in the back row. Anna was on the stand, hands folded, eyes steady. She told her story plain, how he used his badge like a weapon, how no one believed her until someone did. There wasn't a sound in the room when she finished. Even the judge cleared his throat twice before speaking. Miss Lee, he said, you did what you had to do. When Jed was brought in, he looked smaller somehow, a man stripped of costume. His face was pale beneath the bandages. He glanced at me once, then away. The doctor read his injuries aloud. The sheriff read the charges. It took less than an hour. The gavel came down like a final heartbeat. 15 years of hard labor in territorial prison. As they let him out, he stumbled, then turned toward me. You should have killed me, he muttered. I did, I said quietly. Just not the part that makes you human. He looked confused, then laughed. rough and broken, until the guards shoved him through the door. When it was over, people started talking again, too loud, too fast, like they had to fill the air. Anna came down the aisle, her steps small but sure. "It's done," she said. "Justice is never done," I said. "It just changes hands." She smiled, faint but real. "Then maybe it's finally ours." We left town before sundown. The sky turned amber over the plains, light catching on puddles where the snow had been. Neither of us spoke for a while. Words felt too big for the quiet between us. Back home, the wind had shifted south, warm for the first time in months. The fields shimmered with meltwater, the earth breathing again. Anna knelt near the ashes of the barn, fingers tracing lines in the soot like she was writing something only she could read. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "That maybe I'm not scared of the wind anymore," she said. "It's just air trying to move on." I looked at her, this girl who'd arrived half frozen and broken, now standing against the horizon like she belonged there. "You got somewhere you want to go?" She shook her head. "Not yet. Maybe right here for a while. Learn how to stay put." I nodded. "Then we'll rebuild." She smiled at that. "You sure about another barn?" "Yeah," I said. "But this time we'll build it our way. No secrets in the beams." That night, after she turned in, I sat by the window watching the stars come back one by one. Scouts snored at my feet, the fire cracked soft. Out beyond the dark fields, the world was quiet again. Not the kind of quiet that listens back, but the kind that forgives. I thought about all the things the desert, the snow, the storms had taken, and all the things they'd left behind. Sometimes that's the deal. You lose what you built to remember what you stand for. Anna's voice drifted from the bedroom, half asleep. "Eli? Yeah? You think people like us ever get peace?" I looked at the embers, at the faint trail of smoke curling toward the stars. "We don't find it," I said softly. "We make it, a little at a time." Outside, the wind shifted again, gentle this time, brushing against the house like a promise kept. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Spring came late that year, the kind that creeps in quiet, testing the ground before it stays. The snow melted slow, revealing what winter had hidden: fence posts half broken, earth cracked and ready, a barn reduced to a black scar on the hill. I spent mornings with a hammer in hand and evenings with coffee cooling in my cup, watching the sun slide down behind the ridge. Every sound was softer now. Even the wind, once a warning, had learned to sigh instead of howl. Anna planted seeds behind the house, tiny green things pushing through the thawed soil like small promises. Sometimes she hummed while she worked, old songs she didn't remember learning. Scout followed her everywhere, tail wagging slow, a dog finally at peace with the world again. There were nights when she still woke to the sound of wind against the windows, but she no longer reached for the lamp. She just listened until her breath matched the rhythm outside, then drifted back to sleep. The barn we rebuilt together took us most of the summer. Every beam, every nail, laid by hand. No oil, no hidden cords, nothing left that could burn. The first night it stood finished, we lit one lantern inside and let it glow till dawn. Not for light, for memory. She said it made the dark feel honest again. I didn't tell her I felt the same. Sometimes people from town rode by, slowing at the gate, nodding in quiet respect. They didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. Stories like ours don't travel well, they get twisted in the retelling. The truth's simpler. Two people broke in different ways, then decided not to stay broken together. One evening, as the sky turned that color between gold and gray, Anna came to stand beside me on the porch. The fields were full of wind again, moving the grass like water. She said, "You ever think maybe the wind's not trying to scare us, Eli? Maybe it's just telling us to keep going." I smiled. "Could be." She looked out toward the line of trees where it all started, then back at the house we'd built. "We did good," she said softly. "Yeah," I said. "We did." We stood there until the first stars showed, listening to the sound of the world breathing. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to listen for footsteps, or thunder, or ghosts. Just the quiet heartbeat of a place that had finally forgiven itself. And if there's a lesson in all of it, maybe it's this. Peace doesn't come when the wind stops. It comes when you stop running from it. So if you're still out there, listening to this, Tell me, what storms have you learned to live through? And when the wind starts howling again, will you remember that it's only trying to remind you you made it home? So if this story found a quiet place inside you tonight, don't let it fade. Leave a light in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from and what kind of wind you've been through. If you believe every scar can teach us something gentle, stay with us out here on the prairie. There's always another tale waiting beyond the next ridge, another fire to keep us warm. Hit that subscribe if you'd like to ride along, and share this with someone who's still learning how to stand in their own storm. Till the wind calls again, this is No Knee, Wild West Saga, signing off under the same sky we all live beneath.